athletes. Today we're going to use tables, equations, and graphs to solve a problem. So let's say that you're selecting a DJ for your school dance, and 3 DJs have come highly recommended. The following prices are Tim's Tunes, which is $70 per hour. Solid Sounds has an $80 setup fee, but it's only $50 per hour. And Light Magic has a $120 setup fee, but it's only $30 per hour. So let's write an equation for each of the 3 DJ companies. Remember, when we write an equation, we need to define our variables. So let's have x equal the number of hours and y equal the cost in dollars. So if we look at Tim's Tunes, I have y equals 70x because it's $70 per hour. And x is the number of hours because I don't know how many hours I would like to hire Tim's Tunes for. Solid Sounds is 50x because it's $50 per hour, but I have to pay $80 for a setup fee, so that's where the plus 80 comes in. And lastly is Light Magic. They're only $30 per hour, so 30 multiplied by x, but they charge $120 to set up, so that's my plus 120. Now let's make a table and showing the number of hours. I used 0 to 6 because I figured my dance is probably not going to be longer than 6 hours. So here's my table. Notice that on the left part of my table, this left column, it's always my independent variable or my x. This time it's time in hours. My y is my dependent variable or the vertical line, and that's going to be the cost in dollars. I have 3 different companies, Tim's Tunes, Solid Sounds, and Light Magic. So these are going to be different prices depending on the number of hours. There's my hours 0 to 6, and now I can calculate the cost using my equations. So let's start with Tim's Tunes. We wrote y equals 70x, which means x needs to be replaced with the number of hours. So if the hours is 0 for Tim's Tunes, I don't have to pay any money. For 1 hour, it's 70. For 2 hours, 140, 210, 280, 350, 420. So you can see that they're in increments of $70 each. For Solid Sounds, we're using y equals 50x plus 80. Notice that I start with 80. And the reason I start with 80 is because of that setup fee. So 50 multiplied by 0 is 0 plus 80 is 80. And then after that, they're increments of 50. For Light Magic, it's 120 to start with because of the setup fee, but then it's in increments of 30. Now let's graph these. Notice that I have my time, again, my independent variable, and my dependent variable is the cost. And this is the relationship of the cost versus the time and hours of the DJ companies. So here's Tim's Tunes as ordered pairs 00, 170, 2, 140, etc. And I can connect my points. I'm doing the same thing with Solid Sounds and Light Magic. Now that we have our table and our graph, we can use this information to answer some questions. So the first question is, which company is the cheapest for $1? Well, looking at the table, I would go over here to the 1 hour and I notice Tim's Tunes is only $70. Solid Sounds is $130 and Light Magic is $150. If I was looking at my graph, it's the one that's the lowest. So right here, you can see that these are more expensive because they're higher up on the graph. For 3 hours on my table, I noticed that Tim's Tunes and Light Magic are both $210, where Solid Sounds is $20 more at $230. On my graph, I can see it's where the lines intersect, the blue and the green, because remember that they're both 210. And you'll notice that Solid Sounds, the red line, again, it's above that point, so it would be more expensive. For 5 hours, I noticed that it's Light Magic, because both Tim's Tunes and Solid Sounds are more than 270, and on the graph, these points again are higher than the point for Light Magic. And for 6 hours, it's Light Magic again. Notice it's only $300, and on the graph, again, it's the lowest point for 6 hours. Let's say we have a budget of $300. Let's figure out who we should hire and why. So if I look at my table, I notice that for Tim's Tunes and Solid Sounds, it's somewhere between 4 and 5 hours. So more than 4, but less than 5. But Light Magic, I can get 6 hours. So Light Magic would be the best one to hire for 6 hours. If I'm looking at my graph, I can draw some dotted lines from $300, and I see that right here where it crosses on the blue, which is Tim's Tunes, it's a little more than 4. And when I look at this one, the next one where it crosses the red, that Solid Sounds, that's even more. So I would get a little more time than Tim's Tunes, but obviously the best one here you can see is going to be Light Magic because it goes all the way to 6. So you get more than like an hour and a half by using the Light Magic. Now let's use our equations. We can use these equations to calculate whether or not we should go with Tim's Tunes, Solid Sounds, or Light Magic for 6 hours. So for Tim's Tunes, we have y equals 70x. I'm going to replace the y with 300 because remember that y is the cost in dollars. I divide each side by 70 and I get about 4.3 or 4 3/10 hours for Tim's Tunes. For Solid Sounds, I do the same thing, replacing the y with 300. I subtract 80 from each side. I get 220 equals 50x. Divide each side by 50, and I get 4 4/10 hours for Solid Sounds. So I get a little more time with Solid Sounds. And lastly, Light Magic. Again, replacing the y with 300. Subtract 120 from each side. I get 180 equals 30x. Divide each side by 30 and I get 6. So this shows you again that Light Magic you get 6 hours and the other two you just get a little more than 4 hours. Now we can try to figure out which line is the steepest, and we can do this a couple of different ways. We can look at the table first, and when I look at the table, I notice that in Tim's Tunes it has increments by 70. In other words, we're adding 70 each time. With Solid Sounds, except for the beginning, you look at the increments and it's increments of 50. And for Light Magic, again, except for the first one, we look at it and it's increments of 30. So the steepest line has the greatest increments. So it would be Tim's Tunes. And you can see that again by counting by the 70s. In my graph, I can visually see it, that the blue line is steeper. The next steepest one would be your Solid Sounds, and the least steep would be Light Magic. Now, if you look at the equations, I highlighted the numbers in front of the x's, the coefficients, and notice that the 70 is the greatest number. So that means it's going to be the steepest because it's the most expensive as far as the increments go. When we're looking at the y-intercept for each company, we can see that right here on my graph. You can also see it here in the table. You can also see it in your equation. So for Tim's Tunes, you can see here it's at 0, and it means where it's crossing the y-intercept. That means there's no setup fee. And notice there is no plus something. And here it is in my graph. For Solid Sounds, you can see they have a setup fee of $80. That means here for 0 it's 80, and it's shown in the equation as plus 80. And for Light Magic, it was a setup fee of $120. Again, you can see it here in the table, on the graph, and in the equation. Notice when we say the y-intercept, we always write it as an ordered pair, 0, comma, and then the number. So again, the y-intercept for Tim's Tunes is 0, 0, no setup fee. Solid Sound 0, 80, $80 setup fee. And for Light Magic 0, 120, $120 setup fee. So let's say we have another company and they're going to charge us a $75 setup fee plus $60 per hour. How could we write this equation? So we're going to say y equals 60x, because that's how much they're charging us per hour, plus 75 for the setup fee. I hope that helps you understanding how you can use the graphs, the equations, and the tables to solve problems. Thank you so much for watching.